The story begins in a not-so-distant future where Earth has successfully joined the Galactic Accord, a sprawling interstellar organization comprising dozens of advanced species. The integration process is still in its infancy. There are cultural clashes, misunderstandings, and a general air of awkward coexistence. One initiative meant to bridge the gap is the Cultural Exchange Program, where members of different species live and work together to learn from each other. On paper, it's a symbol of unity and mutual understanding. In practice, it's often chaos. Enter Daniel Marsh, a quiet, practical human working as a systems engineer aboard Orbital Habitat 7, one of the many multi-species stations orbiting near Earth. Daniel is not a politician or a scientist of grand reputation, just a hands-on kind of guy. He enjoys solving problems, fixing things, and being left alone with a toolkit, a fusion coil, and maybe some classic rock humming in the background. Then came Ziala, an alien from the species called the Narration, a technologically elite race known for their intellectual arrogance and rigid social hierarchies. The Narration aren't used to disorder, improvisation, or anything that doesn't adhere to strict standards. To them, humans are wild, illogical creatures, barely past their planet bound. Stage. Ziala is chosen as Daniel's roommate, and their pairing feels like a cosmic joke. Where Daniel is laid back and informal, Ziala is meticulous and overly formal. She insists on cleanliness protocols, meal plans based on nutritional cubes, and precise control of the room's climate. Meanwhile, Daniel works late into the night, disassembles and reassembles complex machines on their shared desk, and fills the air with strange Earth music. The two barely interact beyond the necessary. Ziala views Daniel as tolerable but primitive. Daniel sees her as uptight but oddly fascinating. Still, despite their differences, they coexist with a truce-like civility. Everything changes when Ziala comes home early one day from her assigned diplomatic studies. She steps into the shared living quarters, expecting the usual scattered tools and the smell of soldering fumes. But this time, something stands out, something unfamiliar, humming with a low-frequency resonance that sets her sensory organs tingling. Laying on the workbench is a sleek, glowing object. About a meter long, forged from dense alloys that shimmer under artificial light, it pulses softly. Along its spine are strange symbols, not alien, but distinctly human. Yet the design of the object isn't primitive. It's masterful, balanced, dangerous-looking. Ziala halts in her tracks. Her instincts, honed from growing up in a society that reveres structure and fears the unknown, kick in. Her first thought is, weapon. She demands an answer. Daniel, what is that? Daniel looks up from where he's adjusting a power converter, wipes his hands on a rag, and casually replies, "Oh, that's my secret weapon." Ziala's panic spikes. "You brought a weapon into our living quarters? That's a violation of 12 Accord clauses." Daniel chuckles. "Relax, it's not that kind of weapon." He walks over, picks up the object, and hands it to her like it's nothing more than a flashlight. Ziala examines it, still on edge. It's heavy, surprisingly so for its size, and hums in sync with her bioelectrical rhythms. "This is no ordinary device," Daniel explains. "It's a prototype. Torque spanner, a tool designed to adjust high-resistance components, engineered to work under extreme gravity shifts. It uses magnetoresonance technology to apply force with precision. No one else built it. He made it himself over the course of a year, tuning it by hand, adapting it to human neuromuscular feedback. Ziala can barely process what she's hearing. To her, such a device shouldn't be possible, at least not built in a dorm room by a lone engineer without access to a major lab. The Narration had been working on something similar for decades without success, and this human, this roommate of Hers had done it casually in his spare time. She stares at the tool again, not a weapon, not in the traditional sense, but with that kind of precision, that kind of power. It could be. That night, Ziella doesn't sleep. The image of the torque spanner haunts her thoughts. Not just the tool itself, but the implications. What other harmless devices were humans capable of building in their garages? How many more secrets did this deceptively primitive species hold? One thing becomes clear to her. Daniel Marsh isn't just some quiet human engineer. He is dangerous because he builds, not destroys. And that is far more disruptive. From that moment on, she knows one thing for certain. She can't stay quiet. After Ziala's shocking discovery of Daniel's mysterious invention, the atmosphere in their shared quarters shifts. Where she once saw him as a harmless tinker with outdated methods, she now sees him as something else entirely, a potential. DISRUPTO. The next day, Ziala confronts him more calmly, though tension lingers under her composed tone. She points again to the device on the bench and demands to know, what is this thing, truly? Daniel, still unaware of the seismic ripple he's caused in her mind, offers a relaxed explanation. He doesn't speak with fanfare or try to impress, he simply tells the truth. He calls it a torque spanner, an advanced multi-purpose engineering tool of his own design. In function, it's used to apply rotational force to stubborn or delicate machinery, especially under unpredictable conditions like spacewalks, unstable environments, or failing systems. But it's more than that. The spanner is designed with adaptive resonance technology, meaning it can attune itself to different materials and adjust torque levels dynamically. It works in gravity wells, in zero-G, and even in magnetic storms. And it's controlled partly through thought. Thanks to a neural feedback module Daniel jury-rigged using salvaged drone components and Terran military surplus parts, Ziella is stunned. Her people, the Narix, have been trying to create something remotely similar for years, backed by entire research divisions and vast funding. Their best minds hit wall after wall due to safety and precision limitations. Yet Daniel, with no lab, no support, and no AI assistance, somehow solved problems Narix scientists couldn't crack. To Daniel, it's just a better wrench. But to Ziella, it's a revolutionary leap in applied engineering. And yet, Daniel remains humble, even dismissive about it. He admits he built it out of frustration. The tools supplied on Habitat 7 weren't up to his standards, and equipment breakdowns were frequent. So he made something that worked, because waiting on bureaucratic channels or alien manufacturers wasn't an option. For him, practicality was more important than protocol. Ziella is fascinated and alarmed in equal measure. She lifts the tool. It's heavier than it looks, made of a composite alloy she can't even identify. When she runs her clawed finger along the surface, the spanner hums lightly and shifts ever so slightly in shape, adjusting to her grip. A faint blue pulse runs down its length. It's responding. Learning. She quickly places it back on the table. Her mind races. This tool could outperform nearly every standard-issue utility device in the Galactic Accord. Its precision, adaptability, and sheer durability would revolutionize interstellar maintenance, repair, and even construction. And if repurposed, it could become a weapon capable of disabling ship systems, dismantling engine cores, or even breaching reinforced bulkheads. Silently and precisely. In other words, it's not just a tool. Ziella begins to understand something deeper. This is what makes humans so unpredictable, not their brute strength, not their chaotic cultures, but their ingenuity in adversity. Where her people followed rigid research processes and careful theory, Daniel just built things shaped by experience and a need to solve problems in the moment. She voices her thoughts out loud. Do you even realize what this means, Daniel? What you've created here could destabilize multiple trade and patent agreements. This violates NERIC's innovation clauses, Quen engineering restrictions, even the Peloran Energy Tool Treaty. Daniel looks up from his diagnostics and raises an eyebrow. I violated treaties by making a wrench? Ziala snaps, yes, a very illegal wrench. He chuckles. Cool. Her frustration simmers into awe. Daniel truly doesn't see the world the way the other Accord species do. And perhaps that's why he was able to succeed where others failed. He wasn't bound by legacy thinking or galactic politics. He saw a problem, he fixed it, but now she knows too much. Ziala tries to keep it to herself, but it gnaws at her. The NERICs would kill to reverse engineer this. The Galactic Accord would try to either patent it or destroy it. And somewhere deep inside her chest, a pride stirs a pride in her roommate, the human she once dismissed. That night, she lies awake, thinking about the implications. If a single human can make something like this alone, what else are they capable of when they work together? Ziala knows what she's holding on to isn't just a secret, it's a galactic-scale bombshell. One that, if revealed, could shift the balance. OF technological superiority overnight. Ziala had made a choice. Maybe it wasn't intentional at first, more of a slip, a murmur of awe she couldn't quite suppress. But once the words left her mouth to the wrong or perhaps the right people, the consequences began to unfold. Rapidly, it started with a quiet conversation with her superior officer on the Cultural Review Board, under the pretext of safety concerns. She insisted she wasn't reporting Daniel out of malice but out of obligation. His invention, she said, violated multiple interstellar tech classifications. It wasn't a weapon in the traditional sense. It didn't fire plasma or tear holes in ships, but it was disruptive, perhaps even more so. It challenged the standard toolsets used in nearly every Federation-maintained space station. It made legacy systems look like scrap. I need to register a Category 3 disruptive prototype, she told them. Human designed, she added. Personal, handcrafted, highly effective, possibly replicable. That was all it took. Word spread quickly, as it always does in bureaucratic halls teeming with ambition and paranoia. First, the engineers from the Council's Technology Subcommittee made a routine visit to Orbital Habitat 7. Then came the safety inspectors from the Myrick Dominion. Next were representatives from the Gralvarn Industrial League, a hyper-capitalist guild that thrived on monopolizing tool patents. Every visitor came with fake excuses, but they all had the same purpose, to see the legendary human spanner. At first, Daniel was simply confused. Why were people suddenly asking him if he published any schematics? Why were strangers peering through his lab window, offering cryptic compliments on design harmony and resonance geometry? Then the offers began. A Myrick Tech priest delegation arrived in full ceremonial garb, data scrolls glowing as they bowed low and spoke through a buzzing translator. We offer 3 star cruisers, unrestricted trade access, and ancestral relics. From the core worlds, if you would part with the blueprint for your device. Daniel laughed out loud. For my wrench? No thanks. The priest looked visibly shaken. You misunderstand. This is not just a wrench. In Myrick hands, this could rebalance entire shipyard economies. That was the moment Daniel realized something big was happening. He hadn't made just a tool, he'd inadvertently stumbled into a galactic battleground of technology and politics. All he wanted was to build something that worked better than the junk he was issued. Now, he was caught in a vortex of intrigue. That night, he confronted Ziala. You told them, didn't you? He asked. She stood in the corner of their shared living quarters, arms folded across her segmented armor plates. Her expression, though unreadable by human standards, was clearly troubled. "I had too," she said quietly. "It's too important. Do you even realize what you created?" "It's a torque spanner." "No," she snapped. "It's an engine of disruption." The Graalvarn alone own over 80% of interstellar repair licenses. You just rendered them obsolete. Entire supply chains will collapse once this hits the market. Daniel stared at her in disbelief. "I didn't build it for the market. I built it because I was tired of crappy tools." Ziala's frustration gave way to a kind of admiration. "That's what terrifies them. You didn't do this for profit. You did it because it needed to be done. That kind of thinking doesn't exist out here." The core of the issue was becoming clear. It wasn't just the tool that was dangerous, it was the mindset behind it. The Accord's major powers were built on structure, control, hierarchy. Everything had a protocol, a chain of approval. Even innovation was regulated. But humans? Humans were chaotic inventors. They didn't wait for permission. They saw problems and solved them, even if the solution broke a few systems along the way. And Daniel's torque spanner had done just that. It broke systems. Within a week, Earth's diplomatic channels were flooded with formal inquiries. Other species demanded patent reviews, embargo discussions, even intellectual seizure. The Terran Council, initially unaware, was now scrambling to respond to allegations of unlicensed technological aggression. Daniel had gone from unknown engineer to central figure in a brewing trade crisis, all because of a tool no one took seriously. At first glance, and Ziala? She was caught between guilt and pride. She hadn't meant for it to explode like this. But deep inside, a part of her, the curious, truth-seeking part, was thrilled. Because for the first time in her life, she had witnessed genius in action. Not from a lab or a council-certified innovator, but from a stubborn, grease-covered human who didn't know when to stop improving things. And now, the galaxy knew it too. By now, Daniel's quiet life aboard Orbital Habitat 7 had been turned completely upside down. What started as a passion project, a tool made from frustration and ingenuity, had evolved into a galactic incident, Ziala's revelation. While born of awe and perhaps a sense of duty, had unleashed a cascade of events that Daniel neither wanted nor understood at first. The torque spanner, his secret weapon, was no longer just a personal invention. It had become the center of a multi-species political storm. Alien representatives arrived under increasingly flimsy pretenses. Engineers pretending to be customs officers. Guild accountants suddenly taking technical interest in orbital repair systems. Scholars claiming to be researching primitive tool design. Daniel wasn't fooled. Every single one of them wanted one thing: access to the spanner. And what they didn't get through flattery, they tried through pressure. One bold envoy from the Chiron Guild, a collective notorious for aggressive intellectual property seizures, handed Daniel a sleek datapad. "This," the Chiron rep said, "is a legal notice of injunction. Under Accord Law 13.7 Delta, you are required to surrender any unregistered disruptive tool to a neutral authority for evaluation." Daniel blinked. "And who's the neutral authority?" "We are." He handed the tablet back without a word. They didn't like that. The Terran Council was soon dragged in. Initially unaware of the situation, Earth's diplomatic staff scrambled to catch up. Suddenly, their inboxes were flooded with patent disputes, trade violation claims, and accusations of technological sabotage. To the rest of the galaxy, Eartha, newcomer had gone too far, too fast. And all because of one stubborn engineer and his handmade wrench. Daniel was summoned to Earth's orbital embassy. He stepped into a sterile conference chamber flanked by 2 diplomats and a fuming council representative. Ambassador Juno, a woman whose patience had been exhausted long before he entered the room. "So let me get this straight," she began, rubbing her temples. "You built a tool by yourself that can outperform every standard device in 3 major industries. And you didn't patent it?" Daniel scratched the back of his neck. "Didn't think I needed to. It was just for me." "Just for you?" she snapped. "You've destabilized half the Accord's engineering economy. The Chiron Guild is threatening sanctions. The Graalvarn called your spanner an act of systemic warfare. The Accord Council wants to classify you as a disruptive entity." Daniel frowned. "For fixing things better?" "Yes," she shouted, exasperated. "Exactly that." The absurdity hit him then. He hadn't fired a weapon. He hadn't sabotaged anything. All he'd done was solve a problem that no one else had managed to solve. And somehow, that made him the galaxy's most controversial human. Back aboard the Habitat, Ziala was struggling too. She avoided Daniel for a time, unsure whether he hated her for leaking the secret. But guilt and pride wrestled inside her. She hadn't meant to betray him only to report a brilliant invention that, in her mind, deserved recognition. Finally, she approached him again. He was back at the workbench, this time crafting something new, sleeker, smaller. His hands moved with practiced ease. He didn't look up when she spoke. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "I didn't mean for it to go this far." Daniel paused, then turned to face her. "It's not your fault. I guess I didn't realize how badly this place needed a good wrench." Ziela exhaled with relief. "They fear you." He smirked. "I'm just an engineer." "No," she said firmly, "you're a human. And they're starting to realize what that actually means." Then Daniel surprised her. He handed her something. It was a new version of the spanner, smaller, ergonomically adapted for her Narix anatomy, with soft touch glyphs tuned to her neurological interface. It even shimmered in her species' preferred visual spectrum. "You're giving this to me?" "Figured since you already leaked the blueprints in." "You're sleep-talking," he joked. "Might as well make it official." Ziala flushed a brilliant shade of blue-green, the Narix equivalent of blushing. She held the tool in reverence, her mandibles quivering slightly. It was more than a gift. It was trust. Despite everything, Daniel hadn't retaliated. He hadn't lashed out. Instead, he'd done what he always did. He built something better. And this time, he made it for her. In the aftermath of the chaos Daniel never intended to cause, the galactic stage began to shift. What was once a personal invention, a tool built by a frustrated human engineer, had become a symbol of something far larger: human innovation, unbound by bureaucracy, hierarchy, or galactic convention. The tool, now officially dubbed the Marsh Spanner after its unintentional creator, was undergoing strict review by the Galactic Accord Scientific Oversight Board. But by then, the momentum had already spread beyond control. Leaked schematics, whispers of replication, and unregulated prototypes were already popping up across multiple orbital platforms and frontier systems. Attempts to suppress or patent the tool only made it more desirable, though Earth had been pressured into submission at the diplomatic level, agreeing not to mass-produce the spanner. Without oversight, they had gained something else: respect, curiosity, and no small amount of fear. Across the stars, the phrase "human-made" started to mean something different, not crude, not dangerous, but clever, efficient, disruptive in the best and worst ways. And Daniel? He went back to his bench. He wasn't interested in politics, patents, or the trade wars ignited in his name. He was first and foremost a builder, so he built. Not just more spanners, but accessories, miniaturized systems, modular upgrades. He even started crafting teaching tools to explain how his design worked in simpler, Open source formats. That was when the requests began pouring in, not from corporations or corrupt trade guilds, but from smaller colonies, frontier engineers, and struggling maintenance crews. People who lacked access to the expensive and often unreliable tools sanctioned by the Accord. They didn't offer warships or relics. They offered messages of gratitude. Our habitat core was failing. Your design saved 27 lives. We reversed an implosion using your torque matrix algorithm. My daughter fixed our ship stabilizer using your blueprints. She's 9. And Daniel replied to every one. Meanwhile, Ziala's own status had changed. Once seen by her peers as overly sympathetic to the primitive human mindset, she was now heralded as the Narix who discovered the most impactful foreign technology in a generation. Invitations to lecture, research grants, and diplomatic interviews followed, but Ziala declined most of them. She stayed on the habitat not for duty, but for Daniel. Their relationship had evolved from formal cohabitation to genuine friendship, rooted in mutual respect and curiosity. Where she once dismissed human methods as crude, she now marveled at their intuitive logic. Daniel, in turn, found her structured worldview helpful in refining his chaotic processes. Together they became an unlikely engineering duo-one balancing instinct, the other precision. And then, one evening, as stars drifted outside the transparent dome above their shared workshop, Ziala asked him a question that had been building. For months, why didn't you sell it? Daniel looked up from calibrating a new grip modulator. The spanner? She nodded. He shrugged. Didn't want to. That wasn't the point, but it could have made you rich. Maybe, he said, but it wouldn't have made anyone's life better. This way. It helps people. Ziala studied him, wondering not for the first time how many other humans thought like that, not driven by conquest or credits, but by the desire to solve, to help, to improve the universe one wrench at a time. In the following months, the Marsh Spanner Initiative was born, a Terran-led, Accord-supported alliance dedicated to open-source engineering and cooperative tool design. It marked a turning point. For Earth standing among the stars, humans were no longer seen as the chaotic primitives of old galactic jokes. They were builders, fixers, and most unsettling to some problem solvers who didn't ask permission. The spanner didn't end wars. It didn't tear apart empires, but it made empires think. It unsettled complacency. It reminded the galaxy that sometimes the most powerful tools aren't weapons of destruction, but instruments of creation. Ziala eventually returned to her homeworld, celebrated as a pioneer. But before leaving, she hugged Daniel, awkward for her, warm and natural for him, and whispered words only the two of them would understand. You changed everything. Don't ever think small again. Daniel smiled and held up the original Spanner, his first prototype, still humming with life. I never did. And so the story of a quiet human and his alien roommate became legend, not of war, conquest, or rebellion, but of ingenuity, unexpected friendship, and a tool that reminded the galaxy why you should never underestimate a human with time, determination, and a problem to solve.